Well, good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you coming to our session over lunch. We're going to get started here today. We are going to, apologies for the little bit of a delay in terms of the technical functionality, but we're going to jump into things. My name is Colin Morris. I'm the Director of Solution Consulting for MaintainX. I've been working in the industry for the CMMS and EAM space for the past 7 years. I have a background in food manufacturing as well as facilities maintenance. I'll pass it over to Roshan.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate you all joining us. My name is Roshan. I'm the lead product manager of artificial intelligence at MaintainX. I've been in the applied AI industry for about 8 years. Used to run the deep learning platform at one of the world's largest hedge funds. Have a number of patents in NLP as well. Excited to be presenting to you all.
Excellent. Let's go to the next slide. At MaintainX, our goal is to streamline maintenance operations. We're a mobile-first application that's focused on our end-user experience. So any of our technicians that are operating on the shop floor, we provide a mobile application that allows for work order execution, SOP creation, MRO spares management, as well as reporting functionality to understand the overall functionality within your plants. Our goal is to maximize our equipment uptime, so ensuring that we have the most productive operating hours as possible, and ultimately drive operational excellence through standardization of data, the capturing of SOPs and SOWs within a centralized database, and ultimately to ensure that we have good data to be able to execute against AI functionalities. In terms of what we're seeing within the market today when it comes to AI functionalities and adopting different softwares, one of the biggest challenges that we face is a ever-changing and adjusting workforce. As many of you have seen, we are now in an age where people are having a mobile application directly within their pockets. This is allowing them to use information live directly on the shop floor. And ultimately, we need to help to adopt this type of technology from anybody in the ranges, in their end of career, all the way down to the next generation of technicians and different folks that are joining our workforce. Beyond that, one of the biggest challenges is just data. As you've probably heard across multiple conversations over the past few days, data is the next big play within manufacturing experiences. We've seen a large increase in the data collection and aggregation across different systems, whether that be within things like OT platforms, our ERPs, our MRO purchasing solutions, and then also looking into things like our EAM and CMS applications from there as well. With that being said, we are seeing a trend of increasing downtime across our facilities. So this has been ever increasing, primarily due to a labor shortage of skilled trades and ultimately more complex machinery. We used to have machines that were very simple. They didn't require additional programming and support, and ultimately we could get them back online faster. And with those newer and newer machines, it requires additional expertise, outsourcing different labor sources, and ultimately using a different skill set than we previously saw within the industry. The other big thing is as you've probably experienced, AI is everywhere. I'm sure that's probably the most common term that you've heard over the past few days is AI functionality for our manufacturing experiences. The biggest challenge with these tools is they're not always focused on the end user. And ultimately, it can lead to reduced adoption and confusion in terms of different processes and approaches when it comes to the market. So one question I'm going to ask here is kind of curious, how many folks within this room actually have an AI strategy in terms of digital transformation? Just put out your hand up if you actually have been given that mandate from somebody within their business. Kind of. Okay. That is one of the biggest challenges that we see. We hear constantly customers want to adopt AI. And ultimately, people are going out purchasing complex systems that may not actually accomplish their end goals. So 2/3 of the IT professionals that we've surveyed have faced challenges actually understanding what that AI is going to do and ultimately having those feelings of FOMO, fear, uncertainty, doubt, ensuring that we actually have different solutions that need to be used. And rather than actually understanding them, they're going out and buying everything that they possibly can, putting that into a central database and seeing or hoping that it's going to provide value. With that being said, 91% of those projects fail. Why? They don't actually have clear outcomes. They're not necessarily focused on our end user adoption. And ultimately, these types of tools turn into shelfware. They're not being actually used by our end users, and we're not getting value. A lot of the time, these solutions also have a very high cost, so a high churn risk for these types of applications, and we need to ensure that we are actually driving value for our end users. In regards to maintenance, we're seeing about 30% of our customers are actually adopting some of these different tools or AI functionalities. I will say one of the biggest challenges is, what does predictive maintenance mean to our customers? Everybody within this room probably has a different definition. So though we see 30% of our individual customers using predictive maintenance, whatever that means for them, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually leveraging AI tools to be able to help surface data, execute against those particular jobs, and ultimately drive value to their business. So how do we actually get some value out of our AI tools? So we're going to focus on the tools that we built out within our business and our end user experience. So when it comes to these systems, all of them require data. The biggest challenge is they're in disparate systems. It's non-standardized data, so we're gathering data from things like ERPs, our OT systems, our PLCs, our external sensors, and ultimately it's not in a consistent format, which will lead to bad modeling for our AI tools. The other big challenge, as I mentioned previously, is software adoption. So actually getting individuals to use these types of tools to be able to execute against particular goals and outcomes. This is a big challenge for end user education. So how do we actually provide change management to ensure that our end users are going to use and execute against these AI systems, and ultimately ensure that we are actually enhancing these type of applications from here as well? As mentioned, the standardization of information is hugely important. It's great if you're collecting OT data. It's great if you're collecting information in terms of your MRO spares, but ultimately, if it's not in a consistent format, that will fail as an AI project. And so we want to push our customers to use standardized formats, whether it be things like MQTT, whether it be a standardized naming convention using ISO standards for asset management, as well as things like parts management. And ultimately, we need to provide tools to our end users to make sure that they're going to be successful, because ultimately, nobody has time to do a lot of these actions. When it comes to these applications as well, they're hyper-focused. They're very focused in terms of providing insights to expertise. You need to have SMEs in-house to be able to actually understand some of these different predictive maintenance tools. And it can be a high cost to either find these individuals, train new workforces, or push people to use these applications. The other big thing is the utility of these. A lot of the time, customers come to us, they say, we have a complete offering in terms of AI solutions, but they're not actually getting any actual insights. So we need to give work instructions, tooling to our end users so that they can actually leverage the information that we've collected and ultimately execute against it. The last thing is in terms of the value. It's an incredibly costly and time-consuming program to be able to actually execute against AI functionality. Typically, we're seeing customers take between 12 to 24 months before they even have any insights. And ultimately, that is very difficult to justify within this market to our decision makers. It's hard to say, I need to spend $1 million to monitor a particular system, and we need to provide tools that enable it quickly and easily for our end users. I'm sure some of you have probably seen this. Ultimately, I would say the mass majority of our customers are still very focused on reactive maintenance. They are still putting out these fires, going against, executing against it, and not having good data collection and aggregation to ultimately feed into our asset intelligence. What does that simply mean? Though they have a PM program in place, either calendar-based, preventative usage-based, or condition-based, without a standardized naming convention, protocol, and approach, none of this matters. We need to have consistent data and formatting to be able to actually execute against these particular jobs. And what we found is they don't work at scale. You can monitor certain systems, but fundamentally there's more than just these types of applications, and we need to be able to collect all of this information to be able to provide actionable insights. So how are we doing this? How are we actually providing tools to our customers to ensure that they're going to be successful when it comes to this AI journey? We are leveraging the data within our application and our suite of systems to ensure that they're going to be successful. That starts with analyzing historical work orders, so actually understanding what maintenance actions have been taken in past, using that information to surface troubleshooting instructions, challenges they're facing, tooling, parts and management, and ultimately giving the end user the information they already know. It's also hugely important in terms of data transfer. So as our workforce retires, ensuring that our end users actually have the tools in place to be successful, and translating what has been done by a 30-year experienced technician down to our end users that may be within the industry for 2-3 years and are still getting the ropes. Beyond that, we also have a global asset library as well as a procedure library. What this simply is OEM spec documentation and information that we provide to our end users to enhance their existing data. We found a lot of the time our customers don't actually have the OEM manuals. It's been lost in a file folder somewhere, in a filing cabinet, and we need to present those tools directly to our customers so that they can at least leverage a baseline. Of course, we need to do additional refinement as we continue to go up that maintenance journey, adjusting those schedules and procedures based upon the data that we have in the system. But before we're able to do that, we need to have a baseline to be able to be successful. Next one. All right, Roshan.
Thanks so much, Colin. So now I'm going to try to connect some of those concepts that you just heard into features that we actually have in the application today. Again, really focused here on practical AI development, on the end user experience, on building tooling and technologies that your given maintenance managers in a facility and your technicians will actually love to use and will adopt and will build a foundation for the future. So I'm going to cross 4 practical areas for adoption of AI that we focus on. These are embedding assistance into the end user experience so that it's not a standalone platform, aggregating that information over time into workforce and asset planning, preventing errors and faults real time in mission critical situations, and generative AI content to accelerate the development and standardization of all of your practices across this tooling and these SOPs. So the first way we do this is through embedded assistance. One example of this is language agnostic speech to text that is throughout our product, applied to industrial settings. So this is not what you have on your standard phone keyboard. This is customized for noisy environments, and we have tools with PPE and gloves and background noise in mind. The idea here is that we want to capture point-in-time commentary. We want to enable actions via speech, much like Siri, and we want to encourage documentation in cases where it often doesn't exist. So if an issue arises and a resolution happens, we want to track that. We want to actually understand it and encourage technicians to add commentary and add context so that the next time this issue arises, we can flag that using AI. The next is workforce and asset planning across the board. One example of this in our product is estimation of work time. Based on historical data, similar tasks across your user base, we embed this tool that allows you to estimate the amount of time that a user will take to complete a task. We track this over time, we can flag anomalies as well, and we can also chart your trends in a given recurring work order or in given similar work orders that are reactive that should have around the same time to complete. We try to optimize the planning across the board so that a given maintenance manager cannot just track this for a single work order or asset, but across their facility and allocate work accordingly. Another is error and fault prevention. An example of that is our anomaly detection tool. As you can see, this is embedded into SOPs and procedures, as we call them. When technicians are going through these, they get flagged when a piece of data entry is anomalous. In many cases, this is as simple as putting a decimal point in the wrong place or adding a negative sign or adding a 0 in places where it shouldn't be. So one aspect of this is definitely triggering corrective actions when an anomaly happens, but also just capturing correct data so that we can chart these trends and we can add intelligence later on. And the last here is generative content through maintenance documentation. We have an AI procedure generation tool that uses LLM-based technologies so that you can describe procedures, upload content, and quickly generate collateral that can be used down the road. Instead of searching for information manually, instead of going step by step and charting this out, especially in point-in-time situations, we want to give maintenance managers the tools to do this very quickly, to accelerate digital transformation and ensure that this work gets done in a structured, consistent way. And all of this ties together with our Copilot. I'm sure you've seen a lot of them this week. This is not based on the Microsoft tool. This is completely custom and built in-house from a combination of foundational models from companies like OpenAI and open source tooling. Across the board, we see this as a platform. It's the start of a lot of things, essentially, and it's a new way of interacting with our product across the board. There's a number of examples of tools here that you can actually do, but again, this is not based on a concept. It is agentic at the end of the day, but we focus on the work execution component, much like the rest of MaintainX. We want to give maintenance managers and technicians the ability to ask questions as though they would ask a coworker and get the expertise of their entire company with all of the SOPs, the guidance, and the documentation uploaded by maintenance managers in order to do things like generate the content like you see in the previous slide, plan asset work, prevent errors and faults, and get embedded assistance, just like we covered. But this is all point in time and it's conversational. The agentic part is that it's embedded with our platforms. You can enable actions, you can actually trigger things within the workflows that you're already used to. With that, I was hoping to have my laptop up here, but actually it's back there. So we're gonna walk through a verbal demo of MaintainX Copilot just to show you what it does. We'll see how this goes. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, yeah, we're gonna try to zoom in a little bit here. This is the MaintainX platform overall. This is on a given asset page. So this is specific to an asset. You don't have to specify exactly what you're looking for. We've uploaded some collateral here. You can upload just about anything from giant maintenance binders that have tons of pages to specific manuals from the OEM. In this case, I already asked for all maintenance for this machine. So Andrew, if you could scroll a little bit, this is just summarizing all of the collateral you already have, from parts replacement procedures to disassembly and access to safety precautions and a number of other added information, just so you know what you can ask about. There's actions that are embedded at the bottom there too. So in this case, Andrew, if you could go to the bottom and just type in parts list, something super simple, it's going to extract all the parts that it can find in the collateral for this manual that don't exist in this account today. We'll give it a second here. Again, it's looking through a lot of content. It's trying to structure this as well as it can. As I'd mentioned earlier, this is a platform. So even though the information exists like this today, we have a lot of other API functions and actions and more agentic workflows that we're considering here. So it's going to look through all of the collateral you have, and it's identified all of these different parts. It's extracted those, as you can see. Andrew, this is probably a good point to go to the bottom and click on the view in manual. So of course, we're aware of concerns about hallucination. We know that this is a challenging task. If you open page, hopefully 86 there, it should show you a diagram with all of the information. So this is one of the sources. As you can see, there's a list of them, but this is pulling information from the manual. It's extracting from this extremely complicated diagram and generating a parts list. With that, if you could go to the other tab, Andrew, we could just continue the Copilot demo with a specific work order. So this is a corrective action. We're assuming that a standard SOP or a preventive maintenance task failed at some point midway. And this corrective action has been triggered for a power module replacement on an Allen Bradley VFD. As you can see here, there's not much context on it. You see the title. Andrew, if you scroll a little bit, there is a description, but it's very minimalist. It's been assigned to me here. It's just remove and replace the power module for this machine. If you scroll back up, go into edit, we're going to just generate a procedure point in time for this work order. If you go to Copilot, sorry, thanks for doing this. Just go ahead and type in, how do I complete this work order? This one's going to take a second, but again, I want to emphasize how contextualized this is. You don't have to be super specific. It's read through this work order. It knows that you're talking about this Allen Bradley VFD. It's read through the title, the description. It looks through other collateral that you happen to have. It's going to try to answer your technician's question point in time, just so they can continue their work, and so that any other time you have to replace the VFD in your Allen Bradley power module, you'll have this series of steps in this procedure that we're going to generate. So as you can see here, it's gone through all of that, and it's given you a very detailed set of steps that are, again, specific to this work order on this machine, even though it had such little context. It's going to go through removal. It's going to go through replacement. It gives you all of this different guidance. And with that, we're going to go ahead and click one of the actions. We're just going to go generate this procedure. This is a MaintainX procedure. It's a structured SOP that's going to go through each of the steps here. So it structures all of these things so that it's not just information or text responded from an LLM. It's an actual series of steps that technicians can go through. They can flag issues. They can take photos. They can fail things that trigger other corrective actions. And this, Andrew, you can go ahead and add the procedure to the work order. And this is now immediately in line, added to the work order that previously had very little context. It's been tagged. It has all of the information, and it has the procedure embedded right there. I'm just going to be conscious of time here, but there's a lot of other actions we can enable. Once Andrew confirms this work order, you could also ask about parts that are necessary, tools that are necessary. You can ask for diagrams to be surfaced if you don't know, enough about the machine that you're working on. Again, just trying to embed, this agentic system in a way that's very familiar to our maintenance managers, establish trust through the references in the manuals that we showed you, and make sure that this tool, forms a habit over time as we add functionality and as we make the tool more accurate and accessible to the users. With that, you can go back to the deck. Thanks so much. And I'm just going to briefly cover where we're going with all of this. So the MaintainX intelligence layer is the way that we see all of this coming together. On the left, you have asset intelligence, which I've noticed from the conference is often a huge focus for a lot of the companies that we work with, but we need both sides. So I'll start with asset intelligence. We're talking about downtime events, information from sensors, from PLCs, SCADAs, data historians, and data aggregators. Obviously, this is not an easy landscape on its own, but we want to combine all of this information, centralize it, and make it accessible in a really actionable way. That's where the work intelligence comes in. So we want to look at work and parts history. We want to look at all of the OEM manuals and collateral. We want to look at multi-site data across your organization, especially if facilities are using the same assets and going through the same issues. And of course, we want to have an outbound connection to this as well with ERPs and FSMs. All of that comes in the middle with fault predictions, but not just a classification, in an actionable way. As hopefully you can tell from the Copilot demo, if we trigger a classification of a fault, we want to prescribe a recommendation. We want to tell technicians exactly what to do in those situations so that we can actually mitigate the downtime event before it happens. All of that is through Copilot and the platform we're building around it. These are a few examples of the asset intelligence actionability. You have a unified data platform now with this foundation that we've built. You have condition monitoring, traditional predictive maintenance, and forecasting the next failures of a given machine and their likelihood and the classification of those failures, but ideally prescriptive maintenance through this actionable platform and through the connection with work intelligence. On the work intelligence front, we're talking about maintenance strategy across a given facility and over time. We're talking about resource planning from allocation of funding to allocation of skill sets in parts forecasting and ordering, to work execution on a day-to-day basis, especially for your maintenance managers and technicians, to multi-site reporting in a very intuitive and natural language powered way. I'm gonna hand it back to Colin for this last bit.
Thanks, Roshan. So fundamentally, what our goal is to build out a standardized data platform to allow us to have any of these different actions taken directly within a centralized system. One of the big things that we're talking through is things like UNS, ISO standardification, and ultimately providing tools that will allow our customers to get insights at scale. So whether that be leveraging those OEM manuals that we mentioned, our implementation services that provide things like a gold standard approach in terms of the maintenance best practices, so providing recommendations on how to implement our software at scale, as well as being able to ensure that we have a consistent naming convention for a lot of our equipment. We hear time and time again where we call this item one thing and another location we call it something else. And fundamentally, you need your EAM to function as a centralized database, since not all capital assets are captured within applications like an ERP. Beyond that, we wanted to make sure that we have adoption from our end users. As mentioned, this application is very focused on a mobile-first technology. We try to reduce as many clicks as possible for our end users, rather than you having to tab through different components within a system like an SAP PM or other applications that are typically larger, very focused on our end user experience, and ultimately providing an actionable endpoint. Beyond that, we're iterative. We understand that we will be building and changing and adjusting based upon the feedback from our customers. There is a lot of innovation and change happening within this marketplace in terms of AI. I'm sure it's something that we all heard come up and coming, especially with applications like ChatGPT. And ultimately, there will be a changing landscape in terms of the approach that we take and leveraging different softwares and solutions to ensure that we are able to provide this as an application at scale. With that being said, appreciate you all joining our conversation today. If you're interested in learning more, we do have a booth within the conference area as well, number 22. Feel free to connect with Roshan or I on LinkedIn. And we are, let me take a look at the time here. We got about 10 minutes, so we're also happy to take any questions and answer them here today. Yeah.
Former maintenance guy.
Sure.
Okay. I'm worried about hallucination when you get that procedure for your manual. How your system is doing or dealing, or what you talking about hallucination in AI?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Happy to take that one. It's a complicated problem, and we've seen it across the board, especially in the first phase of AI tools. I think the tools were extremely likely to hallucinate or to make up answers that sounded correct or were not correct, for anyone unfamiliar with that term. We worked on this for months. It was actually the first thing we did before enabling any functions or any integrations with our product. It's a process of looking at open source, customizing model frameworks, and adding guardrails and anti-hallucinatory methods across the board. We try to reference anything that we can. So the models, even though we don't output every single thing, understand where each piece of information came from. Same thing with the procedure generator. But at the end of the day, we lean on humans to validate the outputs. We recommend the maintenance managers look at the procedures before they save them. In fact, we make them do so before we add them to work orders. And we learn from all of their interactions. We know when people delete fields or change the title of them or change the classification of them, and the model improves accordingly. So although it's not at zero, it's as low as we can make it today, and we're optimistic about the future and trying to minimize that as much as possible.
Thank you.
I'm curious on the data set that you guys use. So you talk about global asset library. Is that something that you bring to the table, or is that from a client's perspective? And where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a few different sources of information for this. They are all proprietary. They are internal. We've acquired companies that help us label data. We've curated this over time. Obviously, it's an evolving landscape. We do see that it is an enormous value center, but we have that for procedures in the global procedure library that we create with subject matter experts who are all human beings. And then we have the global manual repository as well for asset manuals from OEMs that continues to grow over time. And we also have a product called Asset Connect that helps our customers connect to OEMs and source that information. The asset hub that Asset Connect product makes, it continues to evolve over time. But again, all of this is specific to us. We are looking at ways to acquire more data, but at the end of the day, we do see humans as sort of the last layer of validation for all of the things that go into model training.
So then last on the LLM, do you continuously train that based off your customers' data, or are you allowed to do that or not, I guess would be the question.
Yeah, I think it would be more accurate to say that we train it and fine-tune it on internal data that's proprietary to MaintainX from these different sources that I just mentioned. We do understand the interactions of every given user with the product, so we make the product better based on anonymized usage, the prompts that people ask, the generated actions that people conduct. We do not train on customer data in any way. Data remains proprietary, is covered by SOC 2 and all of that. Thanks as well.
Hi, Melissa Vance from Honda. So a little curious on your platform. Is it sit like on top of a CMMS, like your customers that use that? Like how does that work? And then obviously the interaction from a co-pilot standpoint, if it does sit on a CMMS, does that information go back into that?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, so we are a CMMS and EAM application, cloud-based. So we do have the underlying functionality. The Copilot functionality is an add-on module within our application. So it is communicating directly back within our core system.
Can you put the Copilot on top of another CMMS?
Not currently.
Okay.
It's our secret sauce.
Okay.
Have you ever tried to migrate from one CMM to this?
So in terms of like if a customer has an existing application pulling in information, yeah, we on average we do 600 migrations through our implementation services as well as self-service customers within our system as well. We have a variety of different tools already built internally to allow for transposition of data from one application to another. Do you want to add anything else on? No. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I was just curious. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining. As mentioned, feel free to stop by our booth. We'd be happy to walk through more use cases, but enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you, everyone.